Gaming Discourse has gotten insufferably dumb. That is the title of the video that we're going to be watching today from the Second Wind YouTube channel, which many of you probably know as the new home of Ben Yahtzee Cross Show, aka Zero Punctuation, aka the only reason why anybody ever watched The Escapist to begin with. After quite a kerfuffle over on that website, Ben and a bunch of his buddies and compatriots fled The Escapists to found the Second Wind YouTube channel, where they have been a lot more vocal, shall we say, about certain opinions and beliefs of theirs. And this will go in kind of those same lines, although this is not Yahtzee himself. And I think there are some interesting things to discuss here, specifically when it comes to the nature of reviews, how they affect video games, how they should be done, and whether or not the entire idea of a review site is, at this point, frankly, outdated, and leads to far more nonsense than any actual value whatsoever. There's a lot there that needs studying, in my opinion. Anyways, let's get into it, shall we?
Not a week goes by without some form of brain-meltingly stupid discourse infecting the online game space. Our current political environment has really brought out the best and brightest among us, as every week they turn the nozzle to the cone setting to make sure they cover every inch of the internet with their dribble. Crimson Desert has been a popular conversation topic for months now, as a narrative was crafted that games media hated the game, even though critics generally rated it favorably and only pointed out the same fixable issues that I did.
So, we begin, of course, with our political era, which indeed is very divisive and very much so also polarizing. It means that people will make shit up, and you know what? I'll even grant you this. Some of the outrage against gaming media's coverage of Crimson Desert I do think was a little bit overblown in parts, but to suggest that this was fabricated from full cloth is ignorant at best, and let's be fair here, we've long since abandoned ignorance as a defense of these things, and is outright simply just malicious and or lying. As no, there was quite the sense of the gaming media not being very fond of Crimson Desert for a variety of reasons. To simply ignore that and pretend as if there wasn't a definitive funk hanging over the game's reviews is, I guess, blatantly dishonest. And the dislike for it, well, probably had a lot more to do with its target audience rather than necessarily the game itself.
Which you can hear all about in this video I already made on the subject. The developers at Pearl Abyss have been diligently working on the game since release, fixing a lot of the little pain points and turning Crimson Desert into a better experience for everyone. But the narrative that the game's media hates Crimson Desert remained, because it was rated in the generally high 70s. There's Marathon, which has people stirred up into a frenzy anytime you mention the game on social media platforms.
And there, of course, comes a wonderful example as well. So Crimson Desert was rated in the high 70s. Well, that sounds like a good number, right? And I'm playing the game myself, that's probably where I would put it, but is that an honest opinion of a video game, considering you've got, indeed, games like Marathon, for example, which was given a 9 out of 10 by IGN? Let's be entirely honest here. A 7 by today's gaming media standards is roughly the equivalent of a 5 or so, as the entire numerical awards score system of gaming media is not only outdated, but usually simply just weaponized in the most ridiculous ways. For example, let's take Concord, a rather famous flop at this point that shut down within 2 weeks. It received a 7, okay? So we are saying, by this score, that Crimson Desert is the equivalent to Concord. Again, this is what I mean when I say that the reviews surrounding Crimson Desert were very clearly not entirely fair, and the funk of the reviews seen on the game can also quite clearly be seen. Now, a lot of this also, of course, comes from the errors of the reviews themselves and the system overall. The fact that certain games are enjoyed for other reasons than, strictly speaking, gameplay, but we'll get to that in a moment.
It's gotten so ridiculous that there are accounts being created just to search for and harass people who are enjoying the game. Every day, every hour, there are people making videos or obsessing over the game's player count as if their livelihood depended on it. In some cases, just might, actually. And then we have the most recent...
Yeah, I kind of agree also that there's a little bit too much focus on the game's player count, but honestly, it is also just simply yet more data to demonstrate that this isn't popular. This isn't what gamers wanted. It isn't a video game that anybody asked for, and the only way you will ever be able to actually communicate that is indeed by going, look, this failed. There's nothing wrong with that.
The internet blow up over mixtape.
In fact, if anything, that should have been the job of the video game reviewers, of the video gaming websites.
Short and sweet coming of age story that has people once again arguing over what actually counts as a video game, how critics are supposedly paid shills, and any other number of conspiracy theories someone came up with while sitting on the toilet scrolling social media. One of the talking points surrounds Annapurna, being led by billionaire Megan Ellison, but people frequently neglect to mention that this was the same publisher who released What Remains of Edith Finch, Outer Wilds, Sayonara Wild Hearts, Neon White, Stray, Cocoon, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and Wanderstop, none of which got any attention or backlash for being billionaire funded, an industry plant, or paying off reviewers.
And you know what? Here's another point, right? The reason why so many people are looking up at Mixtape, and I don't even believe it's because it's billionaire funded, although that is a bit of an issue within certain areas of the game's development as well. You know, we had a whole thing with that, what was it, Baby Ghosts thing a few months or a year or so ago now. But it's because the game came from nowhere, doesn't actually seem to be much of a game at all, and yet received rave reviews overnight from everybody simultaneously on the critique side of things, and no good reviews whatsoever from everybody else, to the point where it is indeed a very valid thing to ask, is this a video game? As people have created Let's Play series showing that you can beat the entire game with only 150 command inputs, button presses, throughout the entire game, the majority of which being dialogue choices. Is that a video game? And perhaps more importantly, is that an 86 score video game? And this is where it comes to the purpose of a review, right? The purpose of a review should be to tell you, the consumer, whether or not a video game is worth consuming. Would 86% of people, the overwhelming majority, find Mixtape to be a worthwhile experience? In fact, a more worthwhile experience than Crimson Desert? In all due likelihood, no. Which means somebody has failed at their job here.
A number of outlets awarded Mixtape with perfect scores, and this has predictably set the internet ablaze over the audacity of people with opinions who might have really enjoyed an experience that resonated with them, regardless whether it's a game or, I guess, a more interactive experience.
And there's the point I was just making. Here's the thing. I, as a consumer, don't give a shit about whether or not the product resonates with you. Don't give a fuck. Don't give a flying hoot. None whatsoever. Utterly irrelevant to your job description. As a video game reviewer, your job is to inform me about whether or not I might enjoy a game. That is your entire purpose for existence. And we could then delve into a wider discussion whether or not the current video game review system can fulfill that purpose. And the answer appears, by judging by the crowd, to be a resounding no. Which means that the system itself has failed. It is no longer up to the task. As, here's the thing, if you want, and I remember this argument back during Gamergate, if you want a non-objective review, colored near exclusively by the opinions and preferences of the person reviewing the game, well, you're a hell of a lot better off finding that on places like YouTube, where it is entirely personality-based, rather than a gaming website. See, the point of a gaming website is not to be a person, it is supposed to be a gaming website, where you went, once upon a time, for the closest thing you could get to an objective review of a video game. Indeed, that was the gold standard of video game reviews. Dear old Total Biscuit, may he rest in peace, was the absolute perfect example of this. A man who, if anything, obsessed too much about being objective and honest and judging a video game for what it is and whether or not people would actually agree it. I form a lot of my rarer reviews of his template on this, thinking about would people actually enjoy this and what kind of person would actually enjoy this, rather than if it resonated with me personally. The point of a video game reviewer is yet again to tell the audience if they may like it. Therefore, their resonance or lack thereof simply isn't it isn't the point. It isn't a desirable outcome. And it leads to things like this, where you end up with the critic review of 86 and the audience review of 63. And that incidentally is also a very small audience as well, as it, like most of these games, topped out at a few hundred people. And we can see another beautiful example of this recently as well, which was of course Relooted, a big black middle finger to history controlled by white people. It too received rave reviews from the gaming media that is, I remind you yet again, supposed to inform us, the audience, the viewer, the consumer, about whether or not a video game is worthy of playing, not whether or not it is worthy of being a political propaganda piece. And it too, I think it maxed out, was it 200 odd people playing it? And at that point, you can argue what is and is not a video game till the cows come home. If 200 people buy a game that has received damn near unprecedented marketing from a unified gaming media praising it, that in and of itself is proof that it was not a good video game, because the gamers, the people who play games, rejected it. This is a failure of the reviewer, and probably more widely as well, the review system. Because yes, indeed, the system that we have currently doesn't really allow for all of these niceties, at least not without vastly expanding upon the written review, which is also why video reviews are vastly superior. But even then, the purpose of a review should be relative objectivity, or at least as close as possible to it.
As if it makes a real difference. Not to mention, by the time reviews had dropped, nobody yelling about them had even played the game for themselves yet because only critics had access. A common trait amongst the most talented user reviewers in the online space is having the ability to experience games through osmosis via their most hated critics. This allows them to form an opinion without ever clicking a single button in a game, and they can even distill other people's thoughts into their own personal numbered score, which they can then share with similarly skilled users over on Metacritic.
And, yet again, judging by the fact that they correctly predicted Relooted, that they correctly predicted Crimson Desert, again a far higher user score than the critique score, given that they correctly predicted Mixtape, that they correctly predicted Concord, etc, 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 yes indeed, the more talented of these people appear to have a far closer connection to the actual audience than the professional reviewers have, as demonstrated by the vast disparity in popularity. The simple fact is that in this day and age, the overwhelming majority of people will trust some random guy on Twitter far more than they will IGN or PC Gamer or Kotaku. This alone should be ample evidence that these platforms have brutally mismanaged their place in gaming media and their reputation. As again, I am old enough to remember when these publications were as gods to us. They were our only source of gaming media, our only source of demos. They were the only ways we could even know if a new video game was coming out. They had a complete monopoly over this market, which they themselves, and I cannot stress this enough, they themselves threw it out of the window for political reasons, and as demonstrated by Mixtape's own user reviews scores, they maintained that political position over any aim or pretense to actually serve the customers.
These are all discussions we've been having since the release of Dear Esther in 2012. Yes, before Gone Home was Dear Esther, and yes, people were arguing about whether it was a game 14 years ago too.
It wasn't a game, by the way. It simply wasn't a game. It was a visual novel, in essence, and there's nothing wrong with visual novels, but you really should market it then as a visual novel.
That and video game resolutions. Console warriors were lighting up the internet over which version of the same game was better based on the resolution output. Websites literally built their entire readership off these types of articles. The online gaming discourse has...
And this too is entirely fair. Like, okay, there is a measurable difference between these two things. Does that matter, and which one is better? There's absolutely nothing wrong with having that conversation.
Always been stupid. But until the last few years, it wasn't so heavily monetized and pushed by a huge number of bad actors who are emboldened by the current political climate.
And there too, of course, this is where really the thrust of the point comes in. So this was already heavily monetized, and God, let us not pretend that the console wars of yesteryears wasn't pushed by gaming media. You're only objecting now because the filthy masses have gotten in on the discussion, and now it's stupid. Whilst, yet again, no, this is entirely fair to debate.
At least with video game scores and resolutions, we at least partially know what people are upset about. Lately, people are just making things up to get angry about. A user on social media well known for their constant bullshit whipped up an outrage mob over fake plot details and Ceros, which got spread around all the usual channels as factual information and accrued hundreds of thousands of views. Months ago, Black Myth Wukong Studios reported to have been blackmailed.
I don't actually know anything about that drama, I just saw it on the internet, and to be fair as well, yes, there are absolutely people who occasionally make shit up, like, oh, I don't know, for example, stating that there was no sign or evidence that Crimson Desert had a bit of a stink to it amongst reviewers. People do indeed just pull shit directly out of their arse sometimes.
Into paying $7 million for an American consulting firm, without any receipts to prove it.
And that one, I mentioned at the time that I'm not entirely convinced by that. I can see it happening, however, and the very fact that we exist in a world where it seems conceivable that the likes of Anita or various other Western studios might indeed feel fit to threaten people with cancellation, and the fact that we are willing to believe it says a whole lot about the era we are in. But yes, indeed, as mentioned, sometimes people do make shit up.
Studios like Don't Nod are being attacked for having been awarded government grants, as if it's a new thing for governments to help fund the arts.
Fund the arts. Now, here's the thing as well. The thing is, you aren't just given money by the government. You don't just send in an application and the government goes like, okay, there you go. No, there are requirements for these grants, and more often than not, the requirements are political in nature. EU grants, for example, expressly require you to push their own preferred ideologies, what they view to be a positive, healthy message, etc. So to say that it's just because they're given the government money, no, it's because you are given this money for specific reasons we know and can goddamn read about. In fact, during some of my talks about the game, oh god, I've repressed the memory of it. You know the one, the road tripper across America that has been buried beneath the sea with a whole host of incredibly annoying characters and the black chick in the lead. And the they, them, and all of that nonsense. Anyways, that game was made by Norwegians, and I managed to get access to the actual data and the filings behind it, where they make a big deal of this being a progressive story. Now, why would they do that if it was utterly irrelevant to getting government grants in their applications to government grants, and that it is a timely and political topic? I am happy that I repressed that dustborn. Fuck. I was so close to happiness.
The Spire 2 is being review bombed because Anita Sarkeesian, who's working as an independent consultant these days, is listed in the credits. The investigative minds of our time really had to dig deep to find that one.
Well, is that not fair? Listen, Anita Sarkeesian, I mean, this is the video complaining about how the discourse around gaming is too dumb. Are we going to argue here that Anita Sarkeesian, erudite scholar that she is, elevated the discourse in any way? That she isn't the primary cause for the overwhelming majority of this shit to begin with? Granted, she was but a symbol of the vanguard, and one now largely rejected by the wider left and progressive circles for not being extreme enough, but it is entirely fair and fine to look at a woman who in essence upended gaming and oh boy, demonstrably destroyed a good decade's worth of entertainment with progressive ideals, politics, and the general dumbing down and uglification of video games, and go, you know what? I'm not going to support anything she's involved with. And why is that? Oh, eminently justifiable in the case of Anita Sarkeesian, even from someone like me who argues that we should not commit the same errors of the left when it comes to throwing away any and everyone, tossing the baby out with the bathwater, someone who argues that there must be a path to redemption. Because she herself was one of the original architects of the no way back idea, one of the original members of the cancel culture cult that ruined many lives and careers. She will simply just have to fucking suck it and live by the sword that she herself helped draw. Simple as.
Or how about the CEO of CI Games, thinking that the real reason the Lords of the Fallen reboot, which I loved by the way, didn't sell well was because it didn't have enough scantily clad women in it. And so a bunch of their marketing has been focused on making beautiful women acceptable again.
And I guess we'll see if that'll help. Because Lords of the Fallen does indeed appear to have had a fair bit of a resurgence after the CEO came out far more publicly going, I'm actually going to make a game for gamers.
As if normal people don't like attractive people in their games or entertainment in general. Someone clearly hasn't watched Spartacus House of Asher.
And again, we arrive back at the whole thing of just making shit up wholesale, simply just lying out of one's arse, knowingly and maliciously. To sit here in the year of our Lord 2026 and say that the House of Asher is some sort of example of our entertainment overflowing with beautiful women is... Oy. This is simply not a point of contention anymore, and we don't have to pretend it is. Even the House of Asher, okay, the Spartacus series in general is indeed quite full of boobage and cocks, a tremendous quantity of cocks. If you were to measure their relative screen time, you'd find significantly more penis than you would anything else in all due likelihood. And even then, the cast of House of Asher doesn't quite live up to the old cast now, does it, in that particular quality? Not to mention, the main thrust of the House of Asher is the introduction of a strong female warrior woman who, in her very first scene, beats up 3 Roman guards with her hands bound by chain, then proceeds to dominate all of the male gladiators, despite them being taller than her, stronger than her in every single way, and gains their respect as a woman equal to any gladiator. And she does this, incidentally, of course, without any training whatsoever. She wanders into the ludus, acts like tough as, receives 0 consequences, and then is hailed by everyone. Again, if we are, and here's the thing as well, I enjoy the idea of, okay, has gaming discourse gotten silly? Are we preoccupied with dumb things on occasion? Sure. Should we crack down on people making shit up? Absolutely. Now, if you would please go to the very front of the line for the consequence queue, that would be lovely. After all, live by one's principles, right?
Or any show on Stars, or HBO Max. Anyway, we often refer to the culture war in regards to these things, but at this point, the culture war seems to be focused on literally every game release and developer unless they pander to the right crowds on social media, like the CEO of CI Games has been doing for the last 2 years.
The sweet taste of one's own medicine, right? Because yes, this is exactly what started the culture wars. A decade of games catering exclusively to one group of people, the minority of gamers, as well as thoroughly demonstrated by Reluted, by Concord, by... oh, too many names to goddamn mention, by most probably eminently and obviously as all by the Harry Potter game, which name's second part I've also managed to now bury down my mind. And now, the boot is on the other foot, and your response is to cry foul. No, taste boot leather.
Despite not having an agenda, as he often likes to claim, whatever the fuck that means.
What that means? Well, it means the opposite of you. That's what that means. It means you have had an agenda. The leftists had an agenda. The progressives have had an agenda. We have seen it, we have documented, we have demonstrated it over and over and over again, all the way back to Gamergate, where we also incidentally did prove that game journalists talk to each other and coordinate their reviews as well and releases of certain news articles. So, again, conspiracy theories, etc. The opposite of that is indeed not having an agenda. And hey, we can even, and I'm willing to do so as well, argue that the right-wing agenda might be getting a little bit too deep within gaming as well, as I personally would much prefer if we returned the entertainment to a point in which there was no politics, but at the moment, simply reintroducing attractive female characters, that is not having an agenda. That is merely just the right-wing counterweight to the left-wing's weight.
I've played through Mixtape, and there's nothing to complain about in it. It's just a short, sweet, nostalgic story set in the 90s about finding your path in life as you prepare to graduate high school.
And that too. I haven't played Mixtape, so I can't complain or argue, but there is nothing to complain about it in it. Are you serious? Again, it's a game that can be completed with 150 button presses in total. That doesn't really make it a game, and it certainly doesn't make it a game that the majority of people would enjoy. That alone should be a complaint right there. Simply saying, well, you know, this is obviously a very niche game with very niche appeal that will be enjoyable to a very specific group of auteurs. And that is a complaint. Now, you could certainly argue that that is simply just a qualitative statement. Say, like, okay, if you like this sort of thing, this is for you. And that is, again, the shortcoming of the current day review system. This is something that you would do far better in video reviews, and this is also why the old written review score websites are simply just outdated and need to shuffle off into their shallow graves ASAP. But again, to say there is nothing wrong about it, well, what you're saying then is in essence that Mixtape, a perfect game, is worthy of an 86 average review score, or indeed even higher, as a video game, explicitly, which indeed places it far higher than Crimson Desert. And even as I played it, I was like, okay, well, there's a big sandbox, but I don't know if it's for me. Exact same thing. Is it reasonable to argue that Mixtape, a visual novel with occasional button presses, in fact, I'm pretty sure you'd have to press the mouse button a hell of a lot more to get through fucking Muv-Luv than you would Mixtape, is it reasonable to state that it is a superior video game to Crimson Desert? That seems an inherently ridiculous statement on the face of it, and in the majority of people's understanding and definition of the word video game.
It's got great art, fantastic soundtrack, and is heavy on the emotions. And apparently the biggest controversy people come up with about it is that the cassette tape wasn't rewound in the right direction.
Now, the biggest controversy people can come up with around it is that it was beloved by a lockstep gaming press that seemingly all discovered it simultaneously and then put it out there as if it was the greatest experience ever known to man, when in reality it is, as you put it, a shallow, sloppy, emotion-laden video game, and art is great.
It's a great illustration of how the discourse of today is largely made up of nonsense to benefit those who have figured out how they can game the system and lie with no consequences for doing so, because studios and individuals don't often have the funds to do anything about it, and those that do, like PlayStation for example, often choose to just ignore the noise while the people who work for them are being relentlessly targeted online.
Ah yes, the next step of course, as these people who just lie, they just make stuff up, unless us, our noble gaming journalists, who would never fabricate nonsense from thin air. I'm not even going to point it out at this point. Now we must have the corporation step in and target these people. This is the reason why nobody likes you guys. Because you go and run and cry to mommy whenever anything happens, and you wish for the corporations to target those who disagree with you. All I'm saying is, right now as well, the counteracting to the left is to simply have attractive female characters in video games again. This is likely to escalate as the right wing gains more and more political power, and For the left's sake in general, and yours, I hope that when the future eventually comes, they will simply have forgotten about the fact that you, when you were in any position of power, privilege, or authority, continued to argue that corporations should crack down on the opposition. Otherwise, you might actually have something to cry about.
And then we have actual outlets legitimizing so much of this nonsense by giving it the dignity of trying to explain what has people upset in the first place, rather than just calling for what it is. So, why am I discussing this at all, you're gonna ask? Didn't I?
And what is it? Is it, again, just lies, just made up? Again, this is obviously not true. This is not the case. And as for gaming outlets covering gaming-related events, it is indeed a strange thing that they would do such a thing. Indeed, it's baffling.
Didn't I just say it shouldn't be covered? Because it's exhausting to even have to sift through it at this point. Just look at the comments thread under Skillup's review of Mixtape, or literally any post anywhere about the game. This shit is completely unavoidable if you want any presence in the online game space, unless you spend a hell of a lot of time moderating it out of your community.
And you do, I'm sure.
Which I do.
Of course. Which incidentally is why we're here to begin with, by the way.
Because I want our comments and community to be a place you can actually discuss media without the sludge.
And I already know how you define sludge. I don't even need to get into it. Your entire political position and that of your entire allegiance has already demonstrated exactly what sludge means and who should be banned. There is one truth, the other side is perfect, the other side is not. One truth, one side is lying, the other is not, etc., etc. All song and dance at this point.
People need to realize is that these things aren't worth giving the air they're so desperate for. The Discourse creators of today simply don't merit the rebuttals or the time spent on them by the people they're clearly parasitizing.
And hey, go ahead with that. That worked out brilliantly for the left in general. I am all for the progressive movement simply shutting up and not rebutting anything the right wing says. Because, well, it's why there are attractive women in video games again. So please, do that, even as you cannot help yourself but ignore your own advice.
They will cite anyone who says anything they can turn into content and farm the engagement for ad dollars. It's the influencers, the press, the gaming creators, the viewers, it's us. We're all taking part in cheapening the experience of the media we're supposed to enjoy because all anyone can focus on is the fabricated drama surrounding it. A trap that is constantly benefiting the people who create daily content to push that outrage. I'm guilty of this as well, so I'm not trying to sound defeatist here. People love drama. It's a fact of life. You will always have more to say about something that elicits strong emotions from you. But as a collective, we need to be better about sharing work that isn't as provocative, and the work that makes us think or appreciate the medium we interact with so often. The world has an endless supply of stupidity to dish out. It's easy to create, and it's never been easier to monetize. But there's so much good work and discussions to be had online about entertainment media. We all just need to do a better job of curating the spaces for it, and stop allowing the people who just want to ruin everything for everyone to have control over it.
And there of course comes the final thrust. As with all these things. No. Our discourse good, your discourse bad. We must push more of our discourse and we must all unite together to crack down on the other side's discourse. This is how you got into this position. This is how we are here. This is what is attempted to be done when Kotaku releases an article titled "Relooted as a Big Black Middle-Fingered History Controlled by White People." That is them trying to do just that. When they release articles trying to bash Crimson Desert for not being explicitly on their side, that is them trying to do that. The far more reasonable option here, even though it is obviously inconsiderable, is to simply just not. Live, exist, do your thing on your own merits and in your own areas. That is what made the internet beautiful to begin with. That is the era that we lost when the original culture warriors, exclusively left-wing, moved into countless hobbies and declared them to be racist, sexist, or homophobic. The future you claim to want is the past we lost. And again, arguing that the people who are attempting to regain that past are the problem is either, yet again, simply ignorant, and we don't really allow that as a defense anymore now, do we, or willfully misleading and malicious. So, if it really does, and it does appear to come down to two sides accusing the other, no, you're the problem, well, fine. That's what we've been doing for the last 10 years, and it seems to have been working out pretty well for my side, so I guess I'm on board for another decade. Why not? But at least this can be used to open up the interesting debate as to whether or not, well, websites should even exist anymore. Is this a service anymore? Is IGN reviewing anything of any worth anymore? Is that reference material? Is it used by anyone? Is it even helpful if it is used by anyone? No due likelihood, no. And I think the last decade and the explosive rise of alternative media is the final hammer and nail in that particular chest. Now, we all just need to wait for all of the corporate backers who keep the sites alive to realize that too. Still, at least that was an interesting point taken out of it, and I am all too happy, of course, to take up Second Wind on his invitation to create a bit more discourse surrounding this. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Well then, have a good day.